Hello, I'm Jenny Fern and welcome to my library. I'm a chaotic neutral mechanical engineer who's really into permaculture and wants to talk about books. Today I'm so excited. I just saw this video pop up in my suggested videos and I love this idea. The video is where to find books outside of Booktok, 5 sources for unique book recommendations. And this is by 2U Stories. Chagirl hasn't been on TikTok for years, and I've also made a conscious effort to read books that I'm genuinely interested in because I've gone down this before. I had on this channel been posting videos in like 2016, 2017, where I wanted to read books, share about the books that I was reading. I was watching a lot of very popular YouTube people at that time. I was reading very popular books at that time. Like I remember reading Wonder. This is kind of like a children's book. It was pretty long though, I feel like. I read The Girls by Emma Cline because people were talking about it so much. I loved it. I thought it was so good. I also thought the character was really interesting. Obviously she has a lot of flaws. Oh, I should say what it's about. And I was very influenced. I had such a little sense of self. When I revisited Booktube for this current iteration, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to fall into the trap of reading things that were popular at that time just because they were popular, and I wanted to get a better sense of what I actually enjoyed. I feel like I can talk on this with some backing. So almost all of these sources are going to not even include the internet. They're just going to be how to find books that she might be interested in. And I will also share examples from my personal reading. I loved the way that she structured her video. You should definitely give it a watch. And again, I'm stealing the idea whole cloth, but I feel like I have a slightly different perspective than her, so hopefully it adds to the conversation. One of her recommendations, which I'm so glad she got there, and it's going to be my first recommendation because I think it's really important. Where do you find books outside of Booktok and social media? Your library. Your library is such a wonderful resource for you to find books. For example, in my library system, I can subscribe to getting updates from them. They also have curated collections even on their online, like Libby side of things. So you can still see things that they're promoting from the library without even going in, which is great because my physical library location has been closed for renovations for a few weeks. So I highly recommend that you subscribe to their newsletters if your library system offers a newsletter, or just check out their curated collections because they will push things that you would have never heard of otherwise. And especially if the topic is one that you're interested in, you can get a ton of new recommendations from your library. My example is a book called The Forgetters by Greg Saris. This was from a collection promoting Native American or Indigenous literature. I really enjoyed this book and I would have never heard of it if it weren't for my library system. The second place that I recommend you find your books is from people like coworkers, whoever, people in real life and your friends in real life. I think it's so important that we share this hobby of reading with others in real life. One book that I read was from this interchange of people at my work, friends at my work, where we were kind of passing around books with each other. That is The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin. This was the first book I've ever read from Ursula K. Le Guin. I really enjoy her writing. I should say I have also read books that are highly suggested from people that I did not enjoy. And I feel like that can be a little bit trickier to navigate when the person who loaned you the book, you give it back to them and they're like, so did you love it? and you're like, yeah, loved it. I can't do that. I'm fairly honest to a fault. So the third place, this is where I find probably most of the books that I read at the thrift store. I mean, just an absolute ton of books that I read on this channel I discovered at the thrift store. I just read this book recently, The Symbiotic Planet by Lynn Margolis. I found this at a thrift store. If you find yourself a thrift store where the people who stock the shelves are very passionate about books, it can make your life so much easier. I found this one at a thrift store that organizes the books by genre, and they have like an environmental genre shelf, which is where I found a ton of the books that I love. The fourth recommendation I have is to scope out little free libraries and see what you might be interested in. I have a series on this channel where I steward a little free library in my front yard. So this is a little bit of cheating because I have access to these random books popping up into my life almost every day. So I have a series where I go through and I read the synopses and I pick out a couple that I could feasibly be interested in. And I've only done this twice where I actually try to read some of them, and it has definitely exposed me to books I would have never picked up otherwise. So I have two examples of this. I had such experiences with these books that I would never trade away, and that is On Chesil Beach by Ian McEwan and The Winter Vault by Anne Michaels. And even if you don't find a new favorite book of all time, I think it will broaden your horizons, broaden your experience, and expose you to something that you might want to even explore further. As I did with both of these books, these are not genres that I usually read, and I felt quite complicated feelings about both of these books. In the end, they were very well worth reading for the experience. I will also highlight something that I've just started doing this year, and that is looking more closely at the references found in other books that you are currently reading. I am so interested in this concept. I've talked about it in my recent reading vlog, and that's the example that I'm going to share with you today. So this was another find from the thrift store, a completely random to me play. Something drew me to this, and I'm so happy it did because I very much enjoyed my time with this. But one of the cool and unique aspects of this reading experience for me was that the beginning of this book has a list of referenced poetry. I went ahead and read all of that poetry after I read this play. That exposed me to a poem called The Sheep Child by James Dickey. I loved my experience reading The Sheep Child. This exposed me to so much poetry I had never read before, and kind of gave me a little bit of a jumping off point into exploring more poetry. There is a wide world of books to be explored, or literature or poetry or whatever to be explored that is referenced in the books that you're already reading. And if that's the case, then chances are you'll be interested in some aspect of that referenced work. Sorry, there were just some ladies walking in front of my house, and I think they were admiring my garden. Hopefully they weren't upset at it. And then my dog barked at them and then they walked away. So who knows? So those are all of my recommendations that do not even require an internet connection. And it's not like you're going in blind to finding things that you're interested in, because there is marketing on each book that helps you understand if you're interested in it. There is the cover design, there is the title, probably most importantly, the synopsis on the back of the book. You could even read like a random page in the middle of the book to make sure that you have a good vibe with the writing style. That's why I think looking at books as physical objects in the real world is all you need. You don't need somebody telling you what a book is like or how good a book is. You can use the material that's on the book itself to help guide you into making decisions about if you're interested in it or if you're not. And like with anything, you are going to pick up things that you think that you would like that you're not gonna like. And you're also gonna find new favorites. So I have full faith in your ability to find books that you're interested in. I have to say, I have also more recently been influenced by people saying that this is their favorite book, that they love it so much. The biggest culprit for me is Alice in Pages. When I first started making these videos again, I binge heard videos so hard, and I thought our tastes were exactly the same. And I read a ton of her recommendations. I didn't like them to the degree that she liked them, and that was, for whatever reason, so disappointing to me. Now for my 2 additional sources that do use the internet that have an aspect of algorithm to them. One is your comments on my YouTube videos. Not everybody's going to be able to do this, but I think some of you can do some aspect of this. Either asking people on the internet, or maybe you have like an Instagram or something like that where you can get recommendations from people who know something about your reading taste. I think that's what's really cool, is if I'm talking about a certain book and then I'm like, can any of you recommend something like this to me? And then you have some idea of what I like, and you can recommend that to me. I read No Time to Spare by Ursula K. Le Guin because it was a comment from one of you. So grateful to you, thank you. Oh, and like almost all of the manga I've read has been recommendations from you all. Like Frieren and Girls Last Tour, both are things that I absolutely adore. So if that's something that you can exploit, I highly recommend trusting the people who also know what you like. My last recommendation may be controversial considering everything else that I've talked about in this. My last recommendation is ChatGPT. You're in like a very particular mood and you're like, what could I possibly read that will match this mood? I think ChatGPT can help you. And I have an example for this. That is The Particular Sadness of Lemon Cake by Amy Bender. I had written The Inexorable Sadness of Lemon Cake. Is there something called The Inexorable Sadness of something? Why did I write inexorable? That's a certain choice of word that I feel like I wouldn't have picked unless I had some reason to. Anyway, The Particular Sadness of Lemon Cake by Amy Bender was something that ChatGPT kept recommending to me after I gave it like certain amounts of information. So that one is very much tied to algorithms, is very much tied to the internet. And so I guess I would exercise caution with it, but also it is a tool that is available to us. You can also go the absolutely random route, which I have done sometimes as well, where you can have your library, like Libby app. You can have that set to available now and random, and you can explore completely random books. I've done this a few times in my life, and it has always been interesting, if not exactly enjoyable, and something that I've always wanted to try, but have not quite committed on, is doing a random word generated reading list. And I've thought about doing that for the books that are available through LibriVox, which are public domain audiobooks. And I thought how fun it would be to explore older works that are completely random. Those are a couple ideas. I don't have the best success with that, so I'm not gonna exactly recommend it as a way to find good books that you'll actually enjoy. But those are my 5 off the internet, algorithm removed ways of getting exposed to books that you might be interested in. That is really one of the primary ways that I get book recommendations. The other is from the internet, from Booktube, and from listening to other Booktube people give their recommendations. And specifically searching for things on the internet that I think sound interesting. That's another aspect to it. I am a lot more hesitant to pick something up nowadays if I hear an absolute ton about it. And that's just because there's something that removes like a little bit of spark to it for me. If I know that a ton of people are reading it at the same time, it just makes it feel a little less special. Anyway, I want to give a shout out again to You Stories for the idea and for her recommendations, which are largely different from mine. So if you want to hear her recommendations, please go watch her video. You'll get different information and a different perspective about things that will add to your options. If you enjoyed this, please consider sharing it with a friend who you think would also enjoy it. Consider liking and subscribing, and I will be back again soon.